welcome to the deep dive.
Yeah.
So I know you're here with us today because you really want to get a handle on how relationships work.
Yeah.
You know, those aha moments that make everything click. And you want to do it without drowning in a sea of information.
That's right.
We're diving into John Gray's Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus today.
A classic.
A book you picked out as key for this exploration. Our mission is to pull out the most valuable insights for you, for our listeners.
Absolutely. You know, the Mars-Venus thing, it might seem kind of simplistic at first, like just a catchy title, but it actually points to some really fundamental differences in how men and women often experience and navigate relationships.
Yeah.
And it gives us a framework, a way to understand those frustrating misunderstandings that we all run into.
Definitely.
And even more importantly, it helps us figure out how to connect better, more effectively with each other.
Okay, so let's dive into that core idea then, this whole concept of Martians and Venusians. Having these deeply ingrained ways of thinking and behaving. That can sometimes lead to clashes. It's not about saying one is better than the other, right?
Right. It's not a competition.
It's about recognizing these differences
Yeah,
as a starting point for better communication.
exactly. It's about building tolerance, as Gray says. You can think of it like understanding different operating systems.
Yeah.
You know, if you try to run Venusian software on a Martian system, you're going to get errors. You're going to run into problems.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Recognizing those underlying differences is what allows us to adapt, to change our approach,
Okay.
communicate in a way that's actually heard and understood by the other person.
So let's take that idea and see how it plays out. When problems pop up, how do these Martians and Venusians typically respond? What are their go-to strategies?
Well, the book suggests that when Martians, that is men, run into a problem, their first instinct, a lot of times, is to withdraw, to retreat into their cave, to sort things out privately, on their own, come up with a solution in their head. They really value their independence. And they might see asking for help too soon as a sign of weakness or incompetence.
Interesting.
And when their partner comes to them with a problem, often their instinct is to jump right into fix-it mode, because in their mind, offering solutions is the most helpful thing they can do.
Right.
So it's not about shutting you out, it's more about giving him that space to process things internally, to come back feeling more in control, I guess. Understanding this can help you shift your perception from feeling rejected to recognizing that he just needs to process things differently.
That's so relatable.
Yeah.
I can think of so many times when someone I know has kind of retreated into silence when faced with a problem.
Right.
And it was misinterpreted as them being upset or shutting down emotionally,
Yeah.
when maybe they were just in their cave trying to figure things out,
Yeah.
you know?
Exactly. Now, Venusians, women, generally have a different approach. They tend to seek connection and find relief by really talking through their problems in detail.
Right.
Sharing their feelings is a way of processing those emotions and finding comfort through that connection. When a Venusian is sharing, what she really values is empathy, understanding, having her feelings acknowledged, not necessarily someone jumping in with solutions right away.
Right. Just to be heard.
It's about having someone listen and validate her experience, really hear her.
So in a classic Mars-Venus scenario,
Yeah.
you might have Mary coming home after a stressful day at work, wanting to vent about everything that happened.
Right.
She doesn't necessarily want Tom to solve her boss's issues, just to listen
Yeah.
and say, wow, that sounds really frustrating.
Exactly.
But if Tom jumps in with, well, why don't you just
Right.
talk to HR or quit your job,
Mm-hmm.
she might feel like he's not really hearing her, like he's not getting it.
Exactly. And this is where understanding these fundamental differences is so important. For you, the listener, the key is realizing that when your partner withdraws, it's not automatically a sign that they are angry at you or that they don't care.
Yeah.
It's often just their way of focusing,
Okay.
problem solving internally. On the flip side, when your partner wants to talk in detail about something, it's usually about seeking connection and emotional processing, not always a direct request for you to fix things. Recognizing this can prevent a lot of unnecessary conflict, a lot of hurt feelings.
That is such a valuable distinction. Now, let's move on to communication itself. The book talks about differences in how Martians and Venusians listen and what kind of support they need. Can you elaborate on that a little?
Of course. So when it comes to listening, Martians, men, they often listen to gather information, to identify the core problem, so they can figure out a solution. They can move toward a fix.
Okay.
And they can get frustrated by what they see as too much detail if they can't see a clear point or a path to fixing things.
Right.
Venusians, on the other hand, often communicate to explore their feelings, to connect with the other person on an emotional level.
Right.
They really value empathetic listening,
Okay.
where the focus is on understanding and validating their emotions without the listener immediately trying to jump in and solve the problem.
So it's that same difference again, playing out
Right.
in a different way. Tom might be listening to Mary's story, waiting for the problem to emerge so he can fix it,
Yeah.
maybe even getting impatient, while Mary just wants him to truly hear and acknowledge how she's feeling.
Exactly.
It's like they're speaking two totally different languages,
Yeah,
even though they're both using words.
precisely. And Gray makes the point that for Venusians, offering that patient, empathetic listening is a really powerful way of showing that you care and that you respect their experience. Now, when we look at what each gender needs in terms of support, the book offers some key insights. Martians, it suggests, they thrive when they feel trusted, when they feel accepted for who they are, appreciated for their efforts,
Okay.
admired for their skills, approved of in their decisions, and encouraged in their pursuits, feeling genuinely appreciated for what they do. That's a core way they experience love.
Okay.
And like we talked about earlier, unsolicited advice can be a real turnoff for a Martian because it can feel like you don't think he's capable of handling things himself. The book even suggests that a man's sense of self is often very connected to his ability to achieve results independently.
That really explains why Tom might get so annoyed.
Yeah.
If Mary offers directions when he's trying to get somewhere new,
All right.
even if she knows the way, her offering help might come across as a lack of faith in his ability to figure it out.
Yeah.
Like a blow to his need to be competent.
Precisely. For Venusians, the primary needs often revolve around feeling cared for, understood emotionally, respected for their feelings, feeling devoted to, having their feelings validated as real and important, and receiving reassurance, especially during times of uncertainty. They feel most cherished when they sense that their partner genuinely cares about their well-being and their emotional state. The book gives that example of Bonnie needing John to simply hold her when she was in pain, not offer medical advice, or try to downplay her discomfort,
Yeah.
highlighting that need for simple, caring presence.
That really emphasizes that difference.
Yeah.
One side values being trusted to act and achieve. The other prioritizes emotional connection and feeling cared for. It's no wonder those needs can clash if they're not being communicated and understood.
Right.
Now, the book also lists some common phrases that men might use without realizing that can actually invalidate a woman's feelings. Can you give us some examples?
Yes. Gray provides a number of examples, phrases like you're overreacting, or you shouldn't feel that way, or even something that might seem logical, like, but that's not what I meant.
Right.
Those can actually dismiss a Venusian's emotional experience.
Okay.
Other phrases like, it's not a big deal, or just get over it. Those can leave her feeling unheard, like her emotions aren't valid. Basically, these phrases negate the reality of her feelings instead of acknowledging them. Validation doesn't necessarily mean agreeing with her perspective, but it does mean acknowledging her feelings as real and understandable from her point of view.
Right.
Phrases like, I can see why you'd feel that way, that can be incredibly validating.
Right. Because the other phrase is shut down the conversation. They make her feel like her emotions are wrong or inappropriate. Instead of creating connection, they create distance. Now, the book introduces this concept of the rubber band of male intimacy. What's that all about?
It's a really fascinating way to understand a common dynamic. Gray suggests that men often experience intimacy in a cyclical way, like a rubber band.
Okay.
They move towards closeness and intimacy, and then they instinctively need to pull away, create some distance, to regain their sense of autonomy. This pulling away isn't necessarily a reflection of their feelings for their partner. It's more about an internal need to reestablish their independence before naturally wanting to reconnect and be close again. It's kind of like an intrinsic rhythm.
So when a man who's been very close suddenly becomes more distant, it doesn't automatically mean there's a problem in the relationship or a change in his feelings.
Not necessarily.
It could just be this natural rubber band effect.
Right.
The book mentions Sandra misinterpreting Larry's withdrawal as a lack of love. That must be a really common source of worry in relationships.
It is. Absolutely. Understanding this cycle can be so helpful in reducing anxiety and misinterpretations. A woman might naturally interpret her partner's need for space as a sign that he's unhappy or that the relationship is in trouble. But according to this model, it's often a temporary phase. He'll likely return to a more intimate state after he's had that space to recenter himself.
That's a really valuable insight. It helps to normalize those periods of distance. That can sometimes feel unsettling. On the other side, the book describes the wave of female self-esteem. How does that differ from the rubber band?
Well, according to Gray, a woman's self-esteem tends to fluctuate. It rises and falls like a wave. When it reaches a low point, it's often a time for internal emotional processing, almost like an emotional house cleaning. During these times, she really needs support and understanding, even if she might initially seem more upset or withdrawn. The book describes it as a woman going into her well and needing to hit bottom emotionally before she can begin to feel better. It's like her internal system needs to recalibrate.
Right.
And trying to stop the wave prematurely might actually make the process take longer.
Interesting.
Your consistent presence
Yeah.
and understanding, even without seeing immediate improvement, those are what really matter.
So it's not necessarily about something her partner did wrong
Mm.
that triggers this low. It's more of an internal emotional process that she naturally goes through.
That's right.
And the book is the example of Bill. Being confused when Mary seemed to get more upset even when he was trying to listen and be supportive. That makes sense if she needs to go through that emotional dip before she can come back up.
Exactly. Trying to constantly cheer her up or immediately fix her feelings. That might not be what she needs in that moment. The key takeaway is to recognize that these emotional lows are a natural part of a woman's emotional cycle, and offering consistent support and understanding during these times is crucial, even if you don't see positive changes right away.
These metaphors of the rubber band and the wave really paint a vivid picture of these different emotional rhythms. Now let's talk about love languages and this idea of scoring points in a relationship, as the book puts it. It sounds like men and women often express and perceive love in very different ways.
That's a central theme in the book. Gray highlights that men and women often express love in the way they themselves want to receive it,
Right.
which can sometimes miss the mark with their partner.
Yeah.
For Venusians, he emphasizes that consistent little things can be just as important as grand gestures.
Okay.
These small acts of thoughtfulness, they show her that she's being remembered and valued on a daily basis. The book gives a whole list of these little things men can do, like actively listening without interrupting, bringing home flowers, offering to help with chores around the house, or even just giving sincere compliments.
That really resonates. It's often those consistent small gestures
Yeah,
that make someone feel truly cared for,
right,
not just the occasional big romantic event.
right. It's about feeling seen, appreciated in those everyday moments.
What about for Martians? How do they score points and feel loved?
For men, feeling appreciated for their actions is a primary way they experience love
Okay.
and are motivated to give back in return. When a Venusian expresses genuine appreciation for something a Martian has done, whether it's a big accomplishment or a small act of service, it really validates his sense of competence and worth. It directly addresses those core needs we were talking about before. The book explains that when women acknowledge and value men's efforts, it gives them those metaphorical points and encourages them to continue showing their love through their actions, feeling like his partner values his contributions and decisions. That's key for him.
So, a heartfelt thank you for fixing something around the house, or a sincere acknowledgement of his hard work at his job, can be incredibly meaningful for a man and encourage him to keep expressing his love through those actions.
Absolutely.
It highlights the importance of understanding your partner's primary way of giving and receiving love, their love language.
Precisely. Now, the book also delves into the often challenging area of communicating difficult feelings and introduces the concept of love letters. What's the thinking behind that structured approach?
From what I understand, love letters are presented as a way for partners to express their hurt feelings in a more constructive way, less confrontational. The idea is to focus on specific emotions like sadness, hurt, anger, fear, regret,
Right.
rather than just blaming the other person. And importantly, there's also the concept of the partner responding with a response letter, right?
Yes, the response letter is equally important. It gives the receiving partner a chance to acknowledge and validate the feelings expressed in the love letter. Glay emphasizes that successful communication really depends on men practicing loving listening and women practicing loving sharing.
Yeah.
Arguments often escalate when men unintentionally invalidate women's feelings, and when women respond with disapproval or criticism.
That's right.
That's why validation for women is so important, and a sense of approval for men, for resolving conflicts.
Makes sense. If someone feels like their emotions are being dismissed or judged, they're going to get defensive, and the conflict will just escalate. This love letter approach seems like it could create a safer space for being vulnerable and truly heard. The book also mentions the 90-10 principle when talking about these difficult feelings. What's that about?
The 90-10 principle is really insightful. It suggests that when we have a strong emotional reaction to something happening right now, about 90% of that feeling can often be traced back to unresolved emotions from the past.
Wow.
While only about 10% might be directly related to what just happened, this can help explain why we sometimes overreact to seemingly minor things.
That's a really important point. It reminds us that our current emotional responses might be carrying a lot of baggage from earlier in our lives
Right.
or previous relationships. It also highlights the value of working through those past hurts so they don't keep affecting our present interactions. Now, the book also has advice on assertive asking. What are the key parts of making an assertive request?
Assertive asking, as Gray describes it, is about being direct, clear, and concise when you're asking for support.
Okay.
He suggests using specific phrases like, would you or will you, followed by a short and clear request. The book contrasts this with more indirect or lengthy requests. Or using softer phrases like, could you or can you, which Martians might interpret as less of a direct need, or be less likely to respond to quickly.
Got it.
He also emphasizes the power of pausing silently after making the request. This gives the man time to process what's being asked and formulate his response without feeling pressured or attacked.
That's interesting. So instead of saying something like, could you maybe take out the trash sometime when you get a chance, a more assertive approach would be, would you take out the trash now?
Right,
And then just pausing
right.
to give him space to respond.
Exactly. The book even mentions that men might grumble
Okay.
or hesitate when asked for something, but that this doesn't necessarily mean they're not going to do it.
Okay.
It can be more of an initial processing reaction. The key is not to be discouraged by the grumbling. Allow them that space to think it over before they often agree to help.
That's useful to remember, not to immediately think a grumble means no. Finally, the book talks about the seasons of love. What's the significance of that idea?
The Seasons of Love framework helps us understand that all relationships go through different phases, much like the seasons of the year. Spring with those new beginnings and excitement. Summer with its potential for growth, but also heat and challenges. Autumn with a settling in and maybe some letting go. And winter, which can feel empty or challenging. The main point is that relationship challenges are normal and they're cyclical. Experiencing a winter doesn't mean the relationship is over. It's just a natural part of the cycle. And understanding this can help couples get through those tougher times with more patience, resilience, and hope that spring will come again.
This has been an incredibly insightful deep dive into men are from Mars, women are from Venus. For you, the listener, we've really focused on those essential differences in how men and women often communicate, experience emotions, and show love. Recognizing these Martian and Venusian tendencies, both in yourself and your partner, can be a real game changer.
Yeah.
It can help you build empathy, reduce those frustrating misunderstandings, and create stronger, more fulfilling connections. We've explored practical concepts like the male intimacy cycle and the female emotional wave, as well as concrete strategies for better communication, like those love letters, and assertive asking.
And we've emphasized the importance of understanding how men and women often give and receive love differently.
Right.
Those little things that can mean the world to a Venusian, and the power of appreciation in connecting with a Martian. These frameworks give us real, tangible ways to navigate the complex world of relationships.
So as you think about all of this, consider which of these Martian and Venusian characteristics resonate with you the most in your own experiences
Yeah,
and interactions.
right.
How could you use these insights? Maybe recognizing your partner's need for their cave, or understanding your own emotional waves, or even just trying out a more direct would you request.
Right.
How might these things lead to positive changes in your relationships?
This deep dive is really just the beginning. John Gray's book is full of even more detailed examples and practical advice. We encourage you to go back and reread it with these core concepts in mind. Think about specific situations or challenges you've faced in your own relationships. How do these Mars-Venus insights shed new light on those moments?
We'd love to hear your thoughts and any questions you have. As you continue to explore this fascinating topic,
Yeah.
understanding these differences is an ongoing journey, and we hope this deep dive has given you some valuable tools and perspectives to take with you.
Right.
Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.